Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 16, Episode 165. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us this Monday, Steelers Nation Day. 1 week and 1 day until the Pittsburgh Steelers report to training camp for the 2026 season. So very excited for that, but still not a ton going on to get us to the finish line. Couple news and notes, and we'll go through your 90 and 30 series today. So, Dave, how you doing?
All right. Happy Monday. As you stated there, 1 week from tomorrow, they report to Latrobe for the start of training camp. An exciting time of year. Counting down the days, that's for sure, because it's been SLOW at this point. So, I think we got a few things to talk about today. Most notably, we'll hit, I think, about 6 more players in the 90 and 30 series, which is starting to wind down. I'm about 2/3 through my post for today. That will include, TJ Watt, Julius Welshoff, and Levi Wentz. We're obviously a little bit behind that in talking about these players. But that series is coming to an end, and learned a lot about these players along the way here. I think we got bits and pieces of little bits of news, Steeler related, to talk about at the top of the show, along with, I think, an article that you wrote on Mike McCarthy and things that we think that we can expect once training camp gets underway here. So, how are you doing on this Monday? You got a day at the dentist planned, don't you?
Oh boy, fun times over here. Chipped my tooth on Friday, so gonna get that repaired. It's minor, so I won't start the year on active PUP. I think I'll be okay to avoid that.
Good.
Dave, one piece of news to a former Steeler and still gathering some details on it, but yesterday afternoon, former Steelers running back Le'Veon Bell was arrested and placed in the Stark County Jail in Canton, Ohio, just about 2 hours north of where he grew up and played his high school football. Bell had an autograph signing in the area, and the arrest apparently came shortly after that. We don't know the exact charge for sure. This report from local Cleveland area reporter Jordan Miller, who says that is for a warrant for failure to pay child support. We cannot confirm that. In fact, we called the Stark County Sheriff's Office Sunday night to try to get more details. We were unable to. They would not provide those additional details to us, but we can confirm Bell was arrested. His photo has now been uploaded to the Stark County Jail website through their app. And so that is the latest on Le'Veon Bell, Dave.
Not the path to Canton that he definitely wanted there. Look, I obviously don't want to spend a lot of time on this, and it's unfortunate, the whole situation here. I couldn't help but roll back in my head this morning, thinking about, man, what the what if situation with Le'Veon Bell. Had he signed, had he not went through the tag, completely through the tag situations and decided to sit out, part of that one season there. And I can remember writing up a lot of articles about that. And at the time, Le'Veon Bell was angling to get paid both as a wide receiver and a running back, and for the type of player that he was. And I can remember specifically, his agent and the guaranteed money talk, and I forget exactly how I worded it, put it out on Twitter and wrote it in the article that, good luck for Le'Veon Bell thinking he was going to get more than just a guaranteed offer of more than just the first year out of the Steelers. And you got to remember, this was several years ago, back when really essentially only only Ben Roethlisberger, franchise quarterbacks had to achieve such. And Le'Veon Bell certainly didn't like my thoughts on the situation and ended up blocking me. And I think I remain blocked on Twitter by him still to this day. But he obviously the path that he ended up going, and then there was the unfortunate knee injury mixed in there, and man, the moment he obviously did cash in to some degree with the Jets, but I think over the time, had he taken the deal with the Steelers, the likelihood that he would probably have earned more money over the span of years, and the career in New York with the Jets, obviously didn't pan out, and then he kind of just fizzled out with a few more organizations from that point forward there. But it does kind of make you wonder, how different maybe Le'Veon's Bell's path would have been. It felt like, at least at the time, that probably could have expected at least two, maybe three more good or above average seasons in Pittsburgh, and who knows where it would have went from there at the time there. But it'll always be one of those what ifs when it comes to Le'Veon. I know he has talked about it, in some of the Snapchats and Instagram and live streams and all that. I think, for lack of the better words, he wishes he would have found remained in Pittsburgh, and maybe taken that original deal. But
Hmm.
all that's under the water under the bridge at this point. It feels like will Le'Veon Bell will never be a member of the Hall of Honor, will he? Or do you think there's any shot of that whatsoever?
I wondered about that a little bit, and in fact, to your point in question, the what if Le'Veon Bell had re-upped and stayed in Pittsburgh, I wrote about that a couple weeks ago, just as part of the off-season boredom cycle and finding some different ideas to talk about. Obviously, well before all this arrest news came out, and obviously, if he had stayed in Pittsburgh, I think he would have been a slam dunk Hall of Honor candidate, and maybe even a Hall of Famer if his career could have really captured that prime for several more seasons. Because at his peak, he was an elite NFL running back with a unique skill set. His patience and his receiving skills really helped him stand out from anybody else. So, in current form, will he get into the Hall of Honor? I'll say there's a better chance of him than AB, even though AB had a better career and was the more elite player. Just AB's off field has been even more of a mess than Bell's. So with time, sometimes any of those transgressions can kind of be forgotten, and maybe that's the case with Bell. But I'm really on the fence. If it happens, it'll be quite some time.
Where does he sit on the all-time leading Steelers rushers at this point?
Third, and not third, fourth.
Mm.
I'd have to check. I'm not confident in where exactly he ranks. Obviously behind Bettis, behind Franco Harris. I'm trying to think. He's behind
Let's
ahead of
see. I've
Sean Henry
got some.
Johnson,
I've got some.
Parker.
Ooh, bless
Bless
me.
you, bless you. You got it.
He is fourth, I think, behind Willie Parker even at this point. It goes Franco Harris, Jerome Bettis, Willie Parker, and then Le'Veon Bell as far as all time rushing leaders. Bell ended his career with the Steelers with looks like 5,336 rushing yards and 35 touchdowns, whereas Willie Parker 5,378. So obviously, had he remained in Pittsburgh, beyond the time that he was there, he would have easily bypassed Willie Parker there. So the fact that he's fourth on the list, at this point, and the way things went, it feels like he should be very grateful if somehow he were to get into the Hall of Honor. So I'm willing to bet that doesn't happen.
Do you think if he stayed in Pittsburgh, he would have surpassed Jerome Bettis for second on that rushing list? Bettis at 10,571 yards, so Bell just over 5,000 yards behind. Do you think he would have passed Bettis?
I don't know. Would have taken probably at least another 4 seasons, right? You would imagine probably five
Mhm.
more seasons there. It gets kind of sketchy at that point. I mean, look, I mean, he was still seemingly a very productive player overall when he did ultimately leave Pittsburgh, and It would have been tough, I think, to achieve the way the NFL was going and the type of runner that he was. And remember that Bell was never really that explosive runner that would that had a lot of those 20-yard
Mm.
gains on top of it, and because of the running style too, it does kind of make you wonder if it would have taken more carries along the way. So I'm going to say that uh probably not exceed Jerome Bettis. Now, could he have gotten into the 8,000 to 9,000 range? Yeah, I think that would have been very plausible within that. And look, if you look at him from a total yards from scrimmage aspect, with him being such a good receiver, he most definitely could have gotten himself up on the all purpose yards list and made a dent in that, I think. But to think that he would have exceeded the 10,571 rushing yards that Jerome Bettis compiled, that might be a little bit of a stretch, I think.
It obviously is no guarantee. I think he would have done it though, and almost because of that fact that he was not somebody relying on explosiveness in pure speed that would have degraded in time with age and additional carries and workload and wear and tear. He would have still had his patience and his vision and didn't need to be the most explosive bursty back in the world to be an effective runner. So I think, he was coming off back-to-back 1,200 yards seasons. He was still 25 years old after he played his last down in Pittsburgh. So it obviously would have been tight and close and no guarantee, but I think there's a good chance he would have done it.
Okay. Well, it's one of those questions that we'll never have the answer
Mhm.
to. But boy, when he went to New York and Adam Gase, I think, was a head coach there, and it all went to crap real quick for him in New York for sure.
Yeah, even before he played it down, because what happened was he signed with the Jets, and the Jets GM, whenever he signed, was Mike McCagnon, and then the Jets fired McCagnon that summer before training camp even began, and so the GM who signed him was canned. Adam Gase became the interim GM, and Gase was a terrible coach, terrible scheme, and yeah, lasted 1.5 years with the Jets, and then bounced around to close out his career. He's done boxing since. He's been on a lot of the video game, Twitch streaming kind of stuff since, and so we'll see. We'll get some more confirmation on Bell, and I assume he'll have a chance to get bailed and bonded out of jail sometime today.
All right. Okay. That's all the excitement I think people can probably handle on that right now.
All right, Dave. What I plan to have as a headline story today, the article is up on this site, is what to expect from a Mike McCarthy training camp. We're so accustomed to 19 years of Mike Tomlin in Latrobe. So what changes could Mike McCarthy bring? Obviously, we know the times are going to be different with a bunch of AM practices at some assorted times, as early as 10:30, as late as 11:20 AM. So just one difference off the top. And so I wanted to try to investigate and get a preview, maybe an understanding of what a McCarthy training camp could look like. I spoke with four either analysts or beat writers, two who covered McCarthy in Dallas, two who covered McCarthy in Green Bay to get a sense of what those training camps and experiences were like. Got some great information from the four guys I talked to. And so obviously we'll see how McCarthy blends things and puts his own spin and stamp and his way of doing things in Pittsburgh. But the consensus from the guys I talked to was less physicality, unlikely to be the full tackling sessions that Mike Tomlin would have each day. They were in pads, more tempo, more focus on team over the competition periods. And so that's kind of the broad-based expectation for McCarthy once a team reports to training camp on July 20th and has their first practice on the 29th.
And I think Marcus Mosher said, he in the past at least he's run simultaneous 7v7 drills. So that will be fun if that happens to try to keep track of with your shorthand, won't it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't do the play-by-play for 7-on-7. I mean, I'll have to reevaluate, how things go in camp this year and how I'll approach it, obviously, if things are dramatically different. But that would just speak to the up-tempo nature of trying to be as efficient with time as possible. We kind of got that sense in the spring with the Steelers beat guy saying that practice was at a raised tempo, that McCarthy would hold the coaches from taking the field until the last second to maximize the window of time, because once the coaches take the field, the clock starts for practice per the CBA. So it'll be a different way of doing things. I thought one other interesting note too was that preseason starters may not play a ton, even beyond the Aaron Rodgers. We're talking just any starters. You may see less reps than you saw in the past. No guarantee. It'll be maybe case by case and what the team and players need. Also, there was a real consensus that when it comes to veteran versus rookie, as the battle between Dylan Cook and Maxi Honachor, the real agreement was that usually the rookie is going to sit, and at least to begin the year with a veteran, in this case Cook, even though he's not some sort of grizzled 10-year vet, he has the experience over Honachor. So it seems to be the consensus was that Honachor likely to sit to begin the year and then probably start sometime during the year. They also noted that McCarthy likes to rotate guys, especially early in the season. So say at the right guard spot where you have Spencer Anderson and Brock Hoffman and maybe even rookie Jennings Dunker all competing. Whoever wins that job, say it's Anderson, may end up still rotating, series by series or some sort of split of snaps with, say, Hoffman to begin the year. So I thought that was interesting about McCarthy's approach to rookies and vets and maybe rotating some starters to start the season.
All right, did you get into any talk about like backs on backers stuff and all, or would that be classified as part of the physicality aspect of it, where we might not see that, and obviously a lot of people kind of wondering about what's going to happen to 7 shots.
Yeah, they didn't. No one talked about backs on backers specifically. I asked if there was any sort of signature drills that McCarthy did, and there really wasn't any feeling of that. Although in Dallas, McCarthy had what he called mojo moments where they'd be practicing, and then I talked to one Landon McCool, and he said I think it was the Sunday Night Football theme music would start blaring over the speakers, and that McCarthy would stop practice. They'd quickly go to some sort of competition or some sort of other drill period for a couple of reps, and then break back to what they were doing. Sort of those sudden change moments of something happened on the fly. Let's see how guys respond to it. So that was kind of one interesting wrinkle. But the consensus was that McCarthy is not a big fan of the more one-on-one competition stuff and wants team reps, be it 7-on-7 or especially 11-on-11. So that would probably lend itself to less of the backs on backers and even some of the receiver DB stuff that Mike Tomlin would always do during training camp. So we'll see. There's no guarantee for exactly how McCarthy will handle things in Pittsburgh. McCarthy spoke to that in the spring and said, I'm always looking for ideas and blending things and what's worked in the past for these guys with my own ideas. And so we don't know exactly what that setup is going to be, but I think we're going to see less of that physicality, a little more tempo, and more team stuff over one-on-one reps.
All right. It feels like this will be good, kind of refreshing for the vets, even though some of the vets will probably be interesting to see if indeed the 7 shots is carried over, because it feels like a lot of the guys that have been around throughout Tomlin and all like that kind of like that. But it'll more than anything, it's going to keep everybody on their toes, and veteran players obviously along with the younger players on the roster too, because until you get out there and go through a full training camp at least one time with Mike McCarthy, you really don't know what to expect. Even though I'm pretty sure he will outline it pretty good that what's going to be expected and what kind of the day-to-day kind of schedule will be like for them. So yeah, it's exciting, just to see something different. And I know your head will probably be spinning right out of the chute to try to keep up with everything as well too. And I guess more than anything, it'll be after the smoke finally clears here of, what is it, 15, 16 practices this year?
I think 14.
14. To see how what this recon research of yours, if it ended up going kind of along the way that several of these guys that you talked to thought it might go.
Yeah, and we'll definitely note what those differences are, how training camp has changed and shifted just in its structure and the drills and the layout, because obviously any coach like Tomlin in one place for 19 years, his practices became very predictable. And I mean, as a negative, it just, you knew how camp was going to work, what they were going to they were going to start with 7 shots as their first team period, 11-on-11, and then they were going to go to an individual competition period and go back to team. And just the rhythm and flow was always sort of pretty much expected, and a new head coach is going to change things up. So it'll be interesting. Yeah, obviously McCarthy's a veteran coach like Tomlin, one of the few NFL coaches who coached in the old CBA back in the old two-a-days type stuff. And so he's had to go through the whole transition of modifying practice to comply with the CBA and all of its restrictions. So it'll just be interesting. So we'll be reporting on it, but I thought it was really good insight to sort of get a preview from those guys I talked to.
Yeah, good research on your part here. Of all the people that you talked to and all the things that you think that you learned to expect, what do you think has you the most excited?
I don't know if I even sort of sort my feelings in terms of excited. It's just information I'm just trying to take in to prepare to sort of ready myself for whatever sort of shift in layout there is to be able to accurately capture training camp. But if there's more team reps, that's always exciting whenever the whole team comes together to evaluate 11 on 11 and sort of the quote unquote real football of it all. So I don't know. I don't know if I have a real excitement or disappointment. It's just different. And I just want to try to get ready for those changes.
And you should obviously, as many as you've been to over the years with Mike Tomlin leading the team and all like that, it should be a noticeable difference, I would imagine, when it comes to the physicality then.
Yeah, if they're not tackling, then obviously that's going to be a noticeable difference. Now, we won't know that immediately. I can't tell you after the first practice on the
Right.
29th because they can't be in pads until I think it's August 2nd. It's the ramp up period. The first four practices are basically just spring OTAs because you're not in pads. You're just in helmets and shorts. And so you can't tackle even if McCarthy wants to. Now, the guys I talked to said they can remember back to some tackling in training camp, like going to the ground tackling, but that would be a lot of the backups. That was probably in McCarthy's earlier days. The one, I think it was Marcus had told me that McCarthy hates when guys go to the ground. He'll even stop practice sometimes and tell guys to not go to the ground, even for pass deflections and diving interceptions and things like that, because he does not want to see guys get hurt. And there is some of that trepidation that carries over to the preseason. I talked to one reporter, Mike Clemens, who's covered the Packers for a long time. He talked about in 2015 when wide receiver Jordy Nelson tore his ACL in a preseason game against Pittsburgh. And him and Aaron Rodgers were sitting there looking like, why are we doing this? Why are we risking health for our guys? And so kind of a formative moment that came against the Steelers that might sort of shape McCarthy's preseason reps. But we shall see. Each team and situation is different. And so I can't guarantee how camp is going to go, but I wanted to get a little bit of knowledge based on McCarthy's past.
All right, and it looks like you did that. Good job on you. Good angle here with a little over 1 week to go before training camp gets underway. Gold
All right.
star.
Thank you, Dave. All right, let's go to your 90 and 30 series and getting pretty close to the end, although I did not realize there were so many Steelers with W's in their last
Mhm.
name to wrap up this list. So now you're still writing up the final ones. We're probably completed by Friday or so, but let's get to where we left off, and that is with one Mason Rudolph, the veteran quarterback, the number 2 quarterback last year, trying to hold on to that role for this season. You have Will Howard, you have Drew Aller, you're trying to make it all fit. And so where does Mason Rudolph fit into all of that, Dave?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, at least where my expectations are, although I've gotten some pushback, it feels like on social media when it comes to my thoughts on this. To me, it feels like this is a battle between Mason Rudolph and Will Howard for the backup quarterback job in Pittsburgh for 2026, and to some degree, a loser leave town match, if you will. And this all of course assumes that the Steelers do not ultimately keep 4 quarterbacks on their 53-man roster, and think there is, although I would rate it probably a little bit lower than you do, I think there is still some plausibility to that. Overall, I don't know how much this team really needs to see Rudolph play during the preseason. I'm sort of expecting Will Howard to come out of shoot and be given the I don't know if it'll be day one or not, getting into semantics there, but at early portion of training camp, I would expect Will Howard to start getting a lot of the reps as the backup behind Aaron Rodgers there. We'll see how that plays out ultimately. Now, obviously, I don't think Drew Aller, he's got to sign his contract, but still hasn't happened yet, but we still got a week to go for that. I don't think he's got much of if any chance at being this team's backup this year. So I think it all comes down to what kind of the rep distribution is, especially as the backup throughout training camp, and then once we get into the preseason, I imagine there will be at least one game, if not maybe two, that Rudolph plays in. maybe he starts one of them, and maybe he comes in behind Howard in the second one. We'll have to see how all that ultimately shakes out. But I think whether or not Rudolph is retained might revolve mostly around what this team thinks about Will Howard, and if this team can get the sense throughout the rest of the summer that they have confidence that Will Howard can be the number two guy behind Aaron Rodgers. If they can, I can foresee Rudolph either getting traded or cut right before the start of the regular season. If Howard doesn't if doesn't give the coaching staff confidence that he can be the backup, and this team decides not to keep four quarterbacks on their 53-man roster. Maybe they'll put the feelers out to see if they can trade Howard, and if they can't trade Howard, then ultimately he would be waived. And it I know a lot of people think that, well, maybe Howard can land on the practice squad, and I get that, and six round draft pick, and everything that comes along with that. But it to me, if Howard winds up getting waived by the Steelers before the start of the regular season, personally, I think he's got a good shot at landing on another 53-man roster as either their backup or maybe a third string option there. And as far as Rudolph goes, if Rudolph were to get cut and the Steelers were not able to trade him, I don't think he's going to be clamoring to sign up to a practice squad. I think he might wait to see how things go to see if he could land on another 53-man roster potentially as a backup there. So I don't know how you feel on the situation. To me, it feels like this is Will Howard's job to lose as the backup. But we haven't seen him play a down of football in a Steelers uniform since he was drafted. I know another angle people keep trying to push is Drew Aller ends up with a mysterious injury that lands him on IR to start the regular season. I'm here to tell you that, look, if every team just mysteriously wanted to have their top prospects have injuries and land on IR to start the season, you'd see a lot of that around the NFL. And I just think the NFLPA kind of frowns on that type of stuff overall. To me, it's unethical overall. Now, if a guy's injured, he's injured. But if a guy can pass a physical and you try to land him on IR with a hangnail or something like that, to me, I think the teams would get called out on that. But I've been wrong in the past. And look, I'm the same guy that was really excited about Will Howard playing last year during the preseason, and that ultimately didn't happen. And it obviously was a legitimate hand injury, wrist, finger injury, whatever it was with him that landed him on IR to start the regular season. But he ultimately did come off the IR, midway point of the season or what have you there. So to me, Mason Rudolph's spot on this 53-man roster is more about what Will Howard can show, because you have to imagine at this point of Rudolph's career, this team and the NFL in general has a pretty good idea of the type of quarterback that he is.
How much do you think Rudolph controls his fate, or is it really in the hands of Howard, where if Howard plays well and shows he can be the number two, then Rudolph's fate is sort of sealed, and then conversely, if Howard does struggle, Rudolph sort of makes it because he's the veteran option they trust to be that guy off the bench?
Yeah, I think the spotlight's on Howard. I think Howard's play, and once again, this team's got to be coming, because look, Mason Rudolph is a guy that's got enough experience that can get you out of a game and can get you maybe through a game or two as a starter. Don't want to downplay me for him to be able to stick in the NFL and the nature that he's had and be able to spot start and all like that. I mean, there is value within that overall, but Howard cannot afford to have a bad training camp and a bad preseason. End of story. And even as vanilla as it might be during the preseason, you still got to make good decisions overall. I mean, we circle back to the preseason Kenny Pickett had a couple of years ago, and what all did that get you? But but within that, had Kenny Pickett played bad during that preseason, it really would have been a topic of discussion overall.
Mm-hmm.
So it, to me at least, and I know there's a lot of pushback, and I think Mark Caballi is a big Mason Rudolph guy, and I think he feels pretty confident that Rudolph's not going anywhere. I think there's a strong possibility of that happening. And I mean, you look what's going around. We haven't even gotten into the preseason yet. Is there a quarterback or two going to go down injured? Will a team maybe not like their options as a backup? Could the Steelers potentially, if they're comfortable with Howard, end up, getting a late round draft pick, or some sort of a swap for Mason Rudolph? To me, that's the most plausible outcome here when it comes to Rudolph, from at least ahead of training camp getting started.
That he's traded, that's the most plausible, is that what
Yeah,
you're saying?
I think
Okay.
so.
And I wrote about way back when in the offseason that if he is to be traded, and it would not happen until essentially August 29th, August 30th, right at the end of the preseason where cutdowns start. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are a team to watch. They don't have a great backup quarterback situation behind Baker Mayfield. They signed Jake Browning, who once upon a time was a well-regarded backup, but was terrible last year in Cincinnati, just threw interception after interception to the point where the Bengals scoured the earth for quarterback help and made that trade with the Browns to acquire Joe Flacco. And so Browning really can't be trusted. And more importantly, Zach Robinson, the Buccaneers OC, has a really long history with Mason Rudolph. They both played at Oklahoma State. Robinson, trained Rudolph during his pre-draft process. They've remained close ever since. And so there's a lot of familiarity between those two guys that would make a trade pretty, I think, sensible if a trade does occur. If Rudolph is a number two, or just in general, how quality of a number two quarterback is Mason Rudolph, Dave?
I mean, once again, I think he's a guy that can get you out of a game and can spot start for you for a couple games, and potentially get you a win or two along the way there. So I think he. Now look, I think he's a very good number three quarterback, but I mean, I think he can get you out of a game and get you some wins. He's not a guy that I don't think any team would rely on getting you 9 or 10 wins as a starter throughout the league. But he's going to have a job in the NFL, whether it be with the Steelers or another NFL team, as a backup, I think.
Yeah. Would you say he's a good number two? You said he's a good number three. Is he a good number two?
I think he is an above average number two.
Okay. Yeah, I think in some sense he's an ideal number two because he's experienced and he's come off the bench in all situations as a starter, big game, last second. I mean, he's kind of been in every situation a quarterback can be in, and I think he's got enough talent to, take that next snap and be ready for that next snap. Now, is he a long-term option? Obviously, no. And that start he had against Chicago last year, he played poorly, and his deep ball, which is his best trait in terms of his arm strength and accuracy and throwing a good deep ball, was all over the place. He was a mess throwing vertically last year. Remember that first pass that he had was picked off, and that kind of set the tone for the game. So he's a good number two, like a capable number two quarterback. But I think his spot is really tied to Howard, and if Howard plays well and earns the job, then Rudolph probably gets the squeeze. If Howard does struggle, it gets interesting. We'll see what happens from there. Rudolph's chances to stick obviously go up. Any chance they could cut him and put him on the practice squad? I got a couple of comments and feedback on that. I did my roster prediction. People talk about that sometime too, or compare and contrast. But I left Rudolph off, and some people said they'll go sign him to the practice squad.
To me, he would be better served to just biding his time elsewhere. I think he's probably got enough money in the bank where he it might feel a little bit above running a card team or something like that.
Right. If he's not the number two in Pittsburgh, then he probably will have an opportunity to go somewhere to have a better chance to play than be. I mean, he'd be fourth string, but he probably would be above Drew Aller if he did have to come. I don't think Aller's going to play at all unless he absolutely has to this year, but probably would find a better opportunity somewhere else than kind of languish on Pittsburgh's practice squad.
Agreed.
So we'll see. That's the book on Mason Rudolph. All right. Next on the list is cornerback Asante Samuel Jr. He was signed midway through last year and finished out the season with Pittsburgh, re-signed a one-year contract with the Steelers this offseason. Some good cornerback depth, it looks like. So your thoughts on Asante Samuel Jr., Dave?
Yeah, looking back to last year, obviously the delay with him signing with any team was him needing to fully recover from that April spinal fusion surgery that he had. Originally selected by the Chargers in the second round of the 2021 NFL Draft out of Florida State. It never quite has. He's had some splashes, obviously, in the league and has played outside most of the time. Has played in 56 regular season games to date on his way to registering 186 total tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 7 interceptions, 38 passes defense, and 1 forced fumble. He's played over 3,200 defensive snaps in the NFL to date, in addition to 281 more on special teams. The Steelers saw enough of him, at least last season, to re-sign him to a 1-year, $4 million contract, and included within that, the signing bonus was $2.785 million, fully guaranteed. And the fact that you're going to give him that much fully guaranteed money on a 1-year deal leads you to believe that he's going to be in their plans, because if you were to trade him or cut him, you'd be on the hook for that money, pending any kind of offset language in his contract here. Once again, I think the fact that they quickly re-signed him, giving him that much guaranteed money, bodes well for him overall when it comes to the 53-man roster. While he has occasionally played in the slot throughout his NFL career, I think we both agree he's been widely considered as an outside cornerback since he was drafted. The Steelers obviously signed Jamel Dean as an unrestricted free agent this offseason, and he and Joey Porter Jr. are expected to be the starters. Samuel will likely be, I think, his primary competition, at least feels like, might be rookie cornerback Dalen Everett, who was a third-round selection this year. But Samuel obviously has a lot more experience than Everett at the NFL level. It might take a little bit of time to bring Everett along. In the meantime, Samuel could be a pretty good mentor, it feels like, along with the rest of the Steelers, top of their depth chart at the cornerback position there. Samuel does not have a lot of special teams experience at this stage of his career, but he does have some, with most of it coming on the punt return units as an outside vice player. So, you would have to think that if he does ultimately make the 53-man roster, there will be some, at least limited, special team usage in his future throughout the 2026 season. On paper, I mean, he figures to be a great backup cornerback option for the Steelers when it comes to 2026. Once again, should help the younger cornerbacks on the roster. And, barring any injuries to, say, Porter and Dean, Samuel, it feels like, will be lucky to play. I have around 200 defensive snaps in 2026. And that, of course, obviously assumes he makes the 53-man roster. But I mean, you could do worse for an experienced backup outside cornerback on this team. And look, Jamel Dean has had, a little bit of injury history with him. And, I think Samuel will fit in good with this unit as a backup and a one snap away kind of player there. So I like that they were able to get him re-signed there. And I think, once again, at most he'll play 200 or so defensive snaps, assuming the guys ahead of him stays healthy.
I thought for catching the moving train so late in the process last year, Samuel played okay when he had to. Whenever some guys went down, Pierre had gotten hurt and missed a couple of games, and Samuel had that pick to start that game against Miami off of Tua. His play was just okay overall. The tackling's always been the big negative with Samuel, like his dad, and I thought it was, it was passable. But what I'm encouraged by was it was such a tough year for him last year. You get the surgery in April, whenever it was, the spinal fusion surgery, 6-month recovery. You get cleared in October, and you get signed in November, and you get called up in December and finish out the year. Now you're removed from that. You're removed from the rehab and the surgery, the recovery, the medical clearance, working out for teams, all that kind of stuff. You have a full off season to train and just go through your football normalcy. And that'll really, I think, do Samuel a lot of good. A full season and year removed from that surgery. So I think he's a good backup cornerback. I think Pittsburgh got a good deal to re-sign him. The only not the only maybe, but the big concern is like where is the game day value going to come from because he's not a real prolific special teamer. And can he help out there if he's going to be the backup, which he will be to begin the season? Is there a chance he could be even inactive to start the year if Dalen Everett can win a gunner job or just have more special teams value? Eccles has some good value and more versatile, so I do wonder about that. But as depth, it is good depth.
I know some people might bring up maybe the possibility of this outside or the cornerback room in general remains healthy and plays well throughout the preseason. And obviously, look, we're not going to see Porter or Dean much, if any, throughout the preseason. I wouldn't think when it comes to that, if Everett splashes enough and you get some confidence in him. Some people brought up the thought, could Asante Samuel potentially be traded before the start of the regular season? I'm not going to sit here and guarantee that won't happen. I think the probability of that happen obviously is low. I think if you're talking about Asante Samuel potentially being traded from the Steelers in this season, it would more than likely come right before the trade deadline, and specifically if let's say the Steelers are out of the picture, or if Dalen Everett's a guy that because of special teams value and because of maybe learning the defense well and all, and just to progress with him overall, kind of makes Asante Samuel expendable. The fact that you've got that high of a signing bonus involved in this, at the very least, would make Asante Samuel very attractive, because a team trading for him would only have to pick up the remaining base salary at that point there. So if his contract was, say, 1 year, $4 million, and none of it fully guaranteed, that might that uh, there would be potentially more of, I think, of an argument that not necessarily a lock, and when it comes to the 53-man roster. But I just get the sense that he's going to be on this 53-man roster at least to start the regular season, and potentially be the first guy off the bench at the outside cornerback position there. And his special teams play, especially early in the season, I think you can work around that. We'll see. If can he be a vice guy or what have you? You would think that a backup cornerback on this team would have to play on at least one unit on special teams to be put in a helmet for a game to warrant that. Mike McCarthy has talked about you just don't want players there that don't backup players that can't. You don't want those type of guys in helmets overall there. So.
Sure.
I think Samuel maybe can at least carve out a role on one of the special teams units to make him worthy of being put in a helmet, at least to start the regular season.
Yeah, usually, you could probably get one or two. Usually, if you're to dress, you got to play at least on two units, unless maybe you're an offensive lineman and maybe you're doing field goal protect team, and that's it. I could see a scenario, I think I mentioned this before, where he's inactive to begin the year, but if an injury went down to Porter or Dean, he would dress to then play on defense. I think that would make some sense there to sort of balance the lack of special teams value with the depth he offers as an actual defensive cornerback. But we'll see. I think it was good to bring him back. I think cornerback depth is important, especially AFC North, where you're facing Chase and Higgins twice a year. Omar Khan has talked about DB being an oft-injured position. Porter has not been perfectly healthy. He missed time last year. Dean, as I've pointed out many times, and as you mentioned, he's missed time in every single one of his 7 NFL seasons. He's not played a full season to date. And as he approaches 30 and turns 30 in October, unlikely that streak suddenly changes. And so your depth is going to be needed and tested at some point. Samuel offers that, so good across the board. Would you rather, though, the team would re-sign James Pierre over Samuel, or are you happy that Pierre or that Samuel was brought back over Pierre?
Look, Pierre, when he was on the field, he certainly, not only as a special team player, but he had arguably his best NFL season to date.
Oh, yeah.
There. Was that more of a mirage? I don't know. I mean, Samuel is look, Pierre is the better special teams player. I think there's no doubt about that. I don't know. It's 6 of one, half dozen of the other. Yeah, Samuel has been obviously the more productive player, has the pedigree. I haven't given it much thought overall. Obviously you get the gains of Pierre playing special teams, but pound for pound, when healthy, long term over a long stretch, who might be the better defensive player? That's a good one. I would probably lean Asante Samuel, honestly.
Okay. Fair, fair. If I had a magic wand, I would have brought back Pierre, but it would have been double the contract. I think he wanted to go have a better chance to start and play somewhere, and he followed Jared Alexander, who I think really helped him have that career year last year, which he undoubtedly did. So probably out of Pittsburgh's hands, and then I think pivoting to Samuel made a lot of sense.
Oh, I'm trying to roll back in my head. Usually early in the offseason, we make predictions about whether or not a guy will return or not as a unrestricted free agent. I think I had Asante Samuel going elsewhere. Do you remember what you may have your thoughts were on that?
I have it written down somewhere. I believe I had it where I thought Samuel was going to leave and
I think I
Pierre was
did
going to
too.
return. I think I had it backwards.
Okay, I think I had that same outcome there. All right, but that's short and skinny on Asante Samuel Jr.
Next on the list is veteran safety Darnell Savage, and at one point he was sort of Schrodinger's Savage, where he was somehow signed and not signed by the team because it was initially reported in March that he was going to agree to a deal or had agreed to a deal, and then just never heard any update about it until early in June when he officially signed a contract, 1-year deal with the team. So former first round pick, he will try to provide safety depth and stick to this roster.
I think the interesting aspect with him overall is what he does best, how he's been used in the NFL, and obviously the links back to the Green Bay Packer organization with McCarthy, and I think a couple of these coaches on the coaching staff. Although he's new to Pittsburgh, he's not going to be new to several of these coaches on the coaching staff here, and look, I mean, obviously a former first round draft pick with the Packers in 2019 out of Maryland. I was convinced that the way Mike,
Mm-hmm.
Mike Tomlin, and his relationship with the Maryland program and kind of I think the pre-draft things that happened. I I think at one point I had Savage as being, I don't know, either a first or second round pick of the Steelers in one or multiple of my mock drafts. So I have to look back. But after spending 5 years in Green Bay, he's also spent time with the Jaguars, Commanders, and Buffalo Bills over the last 2 seasons. He played in 12 games with one start last year on his way to registering 18 total tackles, 3 passes defense, 1 forced fumble. He played 266 regular season snaps on defense last season and 38 more on special teams. I think when you look at how he's been used and going back to his college career, this is a guy that, although listed as a safety, in the NFL has been used as a very versatile player, logging considerable playing time at both safety positions, slot cornerback, outside cornerback, and even some at kind of a quasi off the ball linebacker spot. You kind of get vibes of uh, a very poor man's, I guess, Jalen Ramsey, if you will, at least from a positional flexibility value. The further that I got into kind of researching what I previously knew about Darnell Savage and what I think about him now, I wasn't huge on this signing originally, but I feel like now at this point he could potentially serve as an very underrated offseason addition. Once again, he has played for several defensive coaches on the Steelers staff now, and Simmons, Joe Witt Jr., and then obviously McCarthy knows him well. The Steelers' defensive back room is obviously now full of quality players at both the cornerback and safety position. Savage's position flexibility is what could ultimately land him on the 53-man roster as a backup. And specifically, if Savage is kind of the guy that we think, at least a backup type player to the way we think Jalen Ramsey might be used, kind of as that star position player, a guy that's going to move around in this defense. Savage, figures to have some value to this team as a special teams player. That will help him, I think, this summer. He will certainly need to show that value throughout training camp and the preseason if he's going to make the 53-man roster. I think this comes down to, with him, assuming he can stay healthy and assuming that he is that kind of versatile defensive back in this defense and how we think this defense might be constructed. I think the construction of the 53-man roster later on, after the preseason could play a key role in whether he's able to, survive the cut down day here. Should he ultimately not make the 53-man roster? I think there's a strong chance that he could open up the 2026 regular season as a practice squad player. But yeah, I think it's going to be I'm going to be asking you a bunch about him during training camp, and then obviously we'll be charting him through the preseason. Not that we'll probably learn a lot schematically there, but if he can show himself to potentially be that next guy up behind Jalen Ramsey, I think, and then knowing what we know or think that we know about his special teams abilities, I think there's probably a 50, maybe even a slightly better than 50-50 chance that he ends up making this 53-man roster.
I'm going to come in lower than you on Savage, Dave. I just don't really see it. I mean, was he really playing true slot corner, or was that the slot snaps he's charted for just sort of like rolling down in twin receiver sets, or if the defense stayed in base? Like, I just don't see a world in which, he's going to play slot corner and nickel over, say, Brandon Eccles if Jalen Ramsey, for some reason, isn't playing in that nickel spot.
Right, but I mean, he does have the versatility at both safety positions, and he has. I haven't not gone back and looked at all the specific charting, down into the tape, back Green Bay and all like that. But I think there's enough there that at least it gives you an option, a guy that's familiar with playing down in the look. Would he probably be? Is he the type of slot coverage player that Jalen Ramsey can be? Obviously not. As far as big, small, shifty, whatever, tight end type player. But I think there's enough there, and this coach, the coaches that he's played for know his ability there, that you could do worse for a backup type player, even if it is slot in certain situations type thing. So I'm not saying that he's the unequivocal backup to Jalen Ramsey, but I think we'll learn more about what this team thinks about him, whether or not they think he can maybe be that guy throughout training camp and the preseason. Look, you got him on the cheap there. You don't have a lot involved with him as far as guaranteed money. I do think there is special teams value within that. I think it all depends on that position versatility being shown throughout training camp and the preseason, along with what you would expect out of him on special teams. That'll go a long way in determining whether or not he's worth keeping on the 53-man roster. And then look, injuries happen as well too. But one for one, if this team stays healthy, I still think he's got like a 50-50 shot as a versatile defensive back with the way we think that this defense might be constructed schematically.
Yeah, I mean, he could make it as a veteran to have some veteran depth. It's never necessarily a bad thing. But where do you assess the special teams value? He played 38 special team snaps in 2025, 7 in 2024. He's never played more than 100 in a season, and that came in his rookie season. I don't see him having clearly any more special teams value than Robert Spears Jennings or Sebastian Castro, the two guys he's fighting for a spot.
Yeah, he's going to definitely have to answer that. Probably at least be a two-phase player out of the four. But I think that's up to him to. And I think he knows that going into this as well too. I mean, he's not going to walk into camp with a guaranteed roster spot. I think that's obvious. Right. So he's going to have to carve out, show that he can, maybe function on a couple of special teams units.
I watched him last year in Buffalo, and just him getting cooked in that playoff game, or in Buffalo against who was it against? Denver? Yeah, I think it was against Denver where they lost. He gave up that long touchdown, and he just looked cooked to me. So unless he looks like a different guy, I just don't see him making it. I mean, he could obviously if Castro and Spears Jennings really struggle, but as a aging safety that can't play a lot on special teams, I just don't really see that path.
And as I left open here, if he doesn't make the 53, he could be a prime candidate for the practice squad.
Yeah, maybe he ends up there. I know, as you said, he's played for Jason Simmons. He played for Joe Wood. He did miss McCarthy by a year, so there's no they never spent time together until now. But I'm sure McCarthy's familiar with him just for his long NFL career.
He was drafted in 2019, wasn't he, by the Packers?
Well, McCarthy was fired after 2018.
Oh, okay,
Midway through
okay. I thought
2018.
McCarthy was there.
No. So it was right after. But I'm sure McCarthy is familiar, and obviously Witt and Simmons know him.
Okay,
I think Simmons coached him in Green Bay, and then
okay.
they were in Washington last year, where Savage bounced around.
All right, I had my thoughts mixed up there
All
when he
good.
arrived.
All right, let's go to what's next on my list. It is Jack Sawyer, Captain Jack, in his second season, Dave.
All right, a guy that obviously probably played a little bit more than what people thought originally, and mainly on defense due to the fact that Watt, Highsmith, and Herbig missed the time that they missed throughout. What do we say? There were 8 games last season where at least one of those guys, I think, were inactive due to some sort of injury there. But when I think as the season went on, Jack Sawyer gained a little bit more confidence. I think his play got a little bit better as time went on. As a rookie, he logged almost 300 snaps on defense, 340 more on special teams. So he was obviously a core special teams player. Of his 34 total tackles last season, 14 of those came on special teams. His play against the run as a rookie outside linebacker it felt inconsistent at times. To me, was the best part of his game. He did make a couple of plays as a pass rusher that he had his moments. Had showed some ball skills with a couple of the interceptions that he had last season. He was, as kind of predicted, coming out of Ohio State, where he mostly played on the left side of that defense. That was the case with him during his rookie season with the Steelers. But he did log some limited playing time on the right side throughout the 2026 or 2025 season, as is evidenced by his high special team snap total as a rookie. He was a core player in that phase of the game throughout his rookie season. So just as was the case last year, he figures to be the 4th outside linebacker this year behind Watt, Highsmith, and Herbig. Could see limited playing time on defense weekly as a rotational guy. We can probably count on him once again being a core special teams player, or at least he better be. Will he play as many defensive snaps in 2026 than he did in 2025? It all depends, I think, on the health of the outside linebacker unit. And how much this team maybe wants to decrease maybe some of the snaps Watt and Highsmith play. You do have Herbig in that big contract that you got to find a way to get him on the field a little bit more. So I think in a perfect world, if Watt, Highsmith, and Herbig can all at least start and play in 16 regular season games, we might not see Sawyer play as many defensive snaps as he did in 2025. I think more than anything, when and if he does see the field in 2026, we should see a better all-around player against the run, a little bit more refined as a pass rusher, although he's probably not going to be anywhere to the level that we've seen of, let's say, Watt and Highsmith. Could he develop into some I think him even reaching the what Highsmith's been able to do might be a little bit of a reach. But this is a guy that's been productive, obviously, throughout the college career, learning from 3 real good veterans there in Pittsburgh there. So I think the take overall here is that we expect him to make the 53-man roster. We expect him to play a lot on special teams, and his defensive usage will come down to mainly, how they want to wind up maybe limiting some of the snaps for guys like Watt and Highsmith, and injuries overall. Because once again, I think that he played a little bit more than probably they expected him to during the 2025 season, due mainly to at least one of those guys ahead of him on the depth chart not being healthy enough to play.
I thought he played pretty well, though. I was pretty happy with his rookie season. I thought he did a great job on special teams, which was new for him. He was a 5-star guy. He was not a special teamer probably at any point in his career, high school, or at Ohio State, because he was just the guy on defense. And so to have to kind of humble yourself, so to speak, and assume that role and do a good job of that. How many snaps did he play on teams last year? A ton of them.
300 something.
Yeah, 340. I think it led the team and did a good job there and kind of showed that in the preseason. But it's kind of what I thought he was coming out. A lower ceiling pass rusher, the get off, the explosiveness, the athleticism isn't really there, but he's big, he's strong, he's physical, he sets the edge against the run, he plays to run hard, and I thought he brought good run defense. And as a no nonsense pass rusher, probably needs to work on his bull rush and get stronger to make that probably his primary weapon, but doesn't get rushed up the arc, rushes smart, and is pretty competitive across the board. So want to see what that sophomore lead could look like. I don't think the ceiling is incredibly high for him. That was my read on him coming out of school. Number 3, rotational guy at best. That's kind of the role he's at right now, close to it. Number 4 rusher, but that rotational run stuffer. So I'm happy with the job that he's done, but I don't think this is the next Nick Herbig necessarily.
No, I don't either. But look, I mean, with this being, if he can start, if for some reason he has to play a high volume of snaps, he could go a long way in giving the Steelers potentially some confidence that maybe he could become a starter at some point here. But it just feels like his stat line in 2026 will probably end up coming in somewhere along the same lines of, and maybe slightly better, I don't know, but very similar to his 2025 stat line.
Yeah, I think we had number 3. I mean, if you assume that this time next year, your big 3 of Herbig, Highsmith, and Watt, someone won't be around, which who knows? But if we just assume that for a second, can Sawyer be the number 3? I think he can get to that point. I think he could do that right now. And even last year was number 3 for a chunk of the year, which is all the guys that got hurt in front of him. And he played in all 17 games last year. So he was the one outside linebacker who stayed healthy on less snaps, fewer snaps, obviously, but kudos to him for that, for being durable when the other guys in front have had their question marks.
Yeah, you could do worse for a 4th string outside linebacker, specifically one that logs the amount of special teams play and was as effective as he was on special teams to boot.
Yeah, and what did Mike Tomlin say? That quote always makes me smile. The sun's always shining on Jack Sawyer. Just ball seems to find him. And a couple interceptions last year. The playoff game had the one. I think the Black had forced. I think it was a tip pass earlier in the season, regular season, where he picked off
Got
the
a
pass.
ricochet right into his hands, and you had the ball awareness to come up with it. So that's a plus. That if the ball gets close to you in your hands, you're finding a way to come down with it.
Yeah, guy just makes some plays. He did that, of course, at Ohio State and doing that in Pittsburgh in the NFL. All right, next on the list is wide receiver Ben Skoranek, the special teams ace, Pro Bowler last year, trying to earn that keep with the new coaching staff.
Played in every game for this team in 2025. Scored the first offensive touchdown from Aaron Rodgers too. If memory serves me, he logged 159 offensive snaps last season during the regular season, and a whopping 310 more on special teams. Let's see, registered 4 receptions for 69 yards and that week 1 touchdown on 6 total targets. Special teams was credited with 21 total tackles and 1 fumble recovery, and that, of course, earned him a Pro Bowl berth for his NFL career to date. Skoranek has 67 receptions for 713 yards and 2 touchdowns on 104 total targets. He's logged, 1,350 regular season snaps on offense since originally breaking into the league in the 7th round out of Notre Dame with the Rams as a special teams player. For his NFL career to date, he has 47 total tackles. His main calling card is his special teams play as he enters his 6th NFL season. That obviously cannot be overlooked when it comes to his chances of making a 53-man roster again this year. He's good friends with Aaron Rodgers. That probably won't hurt him overall. Look, the top, you look at the Steelers wide receiver depth chart, and you get into DK Metcalf, Michael Pittman Jr. Well, Jeremy Bernard's part of this now. Weegan was also a draft pick, even though he's more of a returner. How is Roman Wilson going to figure into all this? Look, Skoranek is not survived in the NFL because of his receiving skills and all. He's in the NFL mainly at this point because of his special teams play. He can still deliver a play here and there on offense in the receiving game. He's a bigger guy willing to do the dirty work in the blocking department there. Yeah, I think his ticket to the 53-man roster this year is obviously his special teams play and his ability to fill in at probably any of the wide receiver positions and play a very limited amount of offensive snaps should it get to that because of injuries here. But his calling cards on special teams, it feels like they'll figure out a way to, even if they if you're technically keeping, let's say, 6 wide receivers. They'll find a way, I think, to get him on the 53-man roster because of his special teams ability.
Yeah, that seems to be a good read, and he was an ace teamer last year. He was fantastic. When your clips go viral for your special teams play, you're doing something right, and there were at least one, if not multiple of those last year. So the Pro Bowl berth was well-deserved. I mean, what, 20 how many tackles last year?
21
21
total,
tackles.
yeah,
I mean,
between assist and solos. Yeah, he was
yeah.
all over the place.
11 solo tackles last year. So really impressive stuff. I mean, what is the offensive value? It was minimal before, probably even less now. He was occasionally in the past used as a 13 personnel single receiver blocker for his size. I assume Michael Pittman Jr. can assume those duties now. Better receiver, similar size, can block and get after it that way. So yeah, it's hard to see the offensive value, but it's hard to see him get pushed off the roster. Receiver depth is not amazing in Pittsburgh, so unless somebody truly emerges, a Hurlman, an A.T. Perry, or somebody like that could really push him, but even then, will they have the special teams value that Skoranek does? Unlikely, so going to be a really four-phase core guy, and probably will make it on that alone.
Yeah, I agree.
Last on the list for today is one of the best names on the roster, Dave. Defensive back Nico Slaughter, signed to a reserve future contract this offseason. So if I would watch enough movies, I could make a Sergeant Slaughter reference intelligently, but tell me about Nico Slaughter, Dave.
What about another famous last guy named Webster Slaughter, right?
I don't think I know Webster Slaughter.
Wasn't Webster Slaughter with the Browns, a wide receiver with the Browns for most of his career?
You look correct, so checkmate. Good job.
All right. I have some football cards with Webster Slaughter. Originally signed by the Jaguars in 2025 as an undrafted free agent out of Arkansas by the way of Tennessee. He was unable to make their 53-man or practice squad roster at any point during last season. After the 2025 season ended, the Steelers signed him to a reserve future contract right out of chute, and he's obviously been on the offseason roster throughout the rest of the summer. During the 2025 preseason with the Jaguars, he played 75 total defensive snaps and 2 more on special teams. He logged preseason playing time at both outside corner and slot corner. He registered 1 pass defense and 8 total tackles during the 2025 preseason with Jacksonville. For his college career, he played in 56 total games on his way to registering 167 total tackles, 8.5 tackles for loss, 2 interceptions, 4 sacks, 13 passes defense, 1 forced fumble, and 1 fumble recovery. He played outside and slot cornerback throughout his college career. He logged quite a bit of playing time on special teams throughout his college career. Pro day, 5'11" and a quarter, 195 pounds, 31 and 38-inch arms. Ran his pro day in 40-yard dash in 4.39 seconds. He did 17 reps on the bench, had a nice vertical and a broad jump. Shuttle time was 4.41 seconds, and 3-cone time was 7.30 seconds, which are okay. Look, this cornerback group with the Steelers heading into training camp is thick and deep. As is the case with a lot of unproven and inexperienced players. On this offseason roster, Slaughter's going to have a really, really tough time proving that he's worth keeping around beyond the preseason. About the best thing, I think, going for him is the fact that he can play at least what we've seen so far in college and limited preseason play inside and outside, willing to throw his body around, his play against the run throughout his college career seemed to be something for him to hang his hat on as a coverage player. He didn't really overly excel throughout his college career. Only registered 2 interceptions throughout his college career. While he did play a bit on special teams, he still only managed to make 6 total tackles in that phase of the game. So he's going to be battling this summer, it feels like, for a spot on the practice squad to open the regular season. There's going to be a lot of competition for him to go against, specifically at the cornerback position throughout training camp and the preseason as well too. I think the first goal for him is staying healthy throughout training camp so he can get himself into the preseason, and we'll see. Could have a kind of a fair number of preseason snaps as we move forward here, and probably playing later in those exhibition contests. And we'll keep eyes on him as far as if he can make any kind of dent as a special teams player. So definitely an outside the bubble player on the 50 when it comes to the 53-man roster, and probably outside the bubble practice squad candidate at this time. But that's why you go through training camp and the preseason, and we'll see if he's a guy that we can end up talking about specifically when we get into these 3 preseason games and start potentially talking about him maybe being an option that this team keeps on the practice squad.
I think my first and main question with Danico Slaughter this summer is where he's going to play. He was an outside corner at Tennessee. He played the slot, or what they call the hog position, at Arkansas, appropriately named. And I looked at him on tape before the 2025 draft, and he's athletic in a line, but he's really tight hipped, and that's even indicative in showing in the agility drills. He had a 4.41 short shuttle, a 7.30 three cone at 195 pounds, 5'11 and change. And so really tight hip. I wonder if he'd have to play safety because he really just can't turn and run and sort of change directions that a good man cover corner has to. So is he called on the site? Is he called a corner or a DB? Do they have not that it means much on the team website, but a designation?
They have him listed as a DB right now.
Yeah. So I don't know. Yeah, who knows if he's going to play corner or safety or slot or all the above. I think some sort of safety role might be best for him, but we shall see. Obviously, if he would try to challenge for a spot, it'd have to come with some extreme special teams value, which seems unlikely, but I just kind of want to see where he lines. He's physical. He can hit. That was my book on him. Like, this guy is going to throw his body around and can do it pretty well, but just felt really tight hit.
Yeah, look, first and foremost, he's got to keep his roster spot till we get to the preseason, and that could be tough to do, being an end of the line kind of player. And even if he's not injured, if a couple injuries happen and lines get short at another position, he could be out the door because of that. So it's going to be a bumpy road for him, and I think it'll be a huge achievement if we're talking about Danico Slaughter still being on the roster come preseason games getting underway.
Yeah, and got to avoid any penalties. He's physical, and so there's a line you have to walk there between wanting to be physical and showcasing that talent without being too physical and overly physical. And when you're type tip, sometimes you have a tendency to grab and lean on guys a little bit that might be a little prone to penalties in game. So we'll watch for that too.
Uh-huh.
But a lot of tackle production. What was it? 167 career tackles. He had 80 in 2024 out of that slot role. So guys around the football a lot, no question about his 1-2.
Right.
All right, Dave, that's going to finish up today's 90 in 30. So we'll have a couple more to go rest of the week. It might be done by, I don't know, maybe by week's end.
Hopefully. So we'll continue to power through this. Once again, I'm wrapping it, coming close. Got a couple more days, and I should be wrapped up on the site by doing 3 a day, barring this team making some late off-season roster adjustments to their 91-man unit. Let's get to a couple of emails here before we close out the show here. We'll start with Mac here. He says, "Hey, Dave and Alex, longtime listener. I have a Mike Tomlin question. What's the Mike Tomlin narrative if Mike McCarthy wins a playoff game, and how does that narrative change with each playoff win and vice versa? What's the Mike Tomlin narrative if Mike McCarthy fails to even make the playoffs? Are we building a Tomlin statue?" I guess I see what the way he's going here. And I've seen some people start to throw out if Mike McCarthy goes on to have a good season and this team get over the playoff win drought. Will it be termed as Mike McCarthy winning with Mike Tomlin's players? Look, this team has had a lot of turnover, obviously, and we expect the 53-man roster this year to be quite different than the week one 53-man roster from a year ago there. I haven't really given a lot of thought to this overall. I just think in general, if you look back really objective, uh, the last couple of teams this team is units this team has put out there, what were the expectations overall when it comes to breaking down that playoff win door overall. I mean, I suppose it would look negative on Mike Tomlin to some degree or some lens if Mike McCarthy comes in first year as the head coach and let's say wins the AFC North and wins one if not multiple playoff games. I imagine that will be framed as a negative to some extent to Mike Tomlin over the last couple of years of his career. I really haven't given it a lot of thought overall.
Mhm.
uh, Look, I think Mike Tomlin, the longevity and the amount of wins, and I still think Mike Tomlin's going to be in talks to be a future Hall of Fame candidate at some point moving forward here. I don't think anything Mike McCarthy does or accomplishes will tarnish that, if that makes sense there. Uh, I get the question, where do you come in on this?
Yeah, like you, I've not given it a lot of thought, but it's not going to like change Tomlin's legacy in the public, national view, even I think locally, all that much. Now, if McCarthy does have success and wins a playoff game, then I think obviously the narrative will be, McCarthy did what Tomlin could not do and got this team over some sort of hump and be kind of, drudge back up Tomlin's history. Although in some respect, you could sit there and say, well, thank you, Mike Tomlin, for stepping down and recognizing that you couldn't do it and let someone else try to move the franchise forward. And you might give Tomlin a little tip of the hat for that. If McCarthy struggles, the team regresses. You're not gonna build statues. I know that he's saying that tongue in cheek, but
Right.
it's not gonna paint, I don't think, Tomlin in a truly brighter light in Pittsburgh. I think nationally it's going to be, see, be careful what you wish for, Pittsburgh. You guys wanted Tomlin gone. He's gone. The team's gotten worse. And now you have to play that hand. But I think in Pittsburgh, it's not going to change Tomlin's perception too much. The reality is they couldn't get over the hump. That's going to be true, even if McCarthy can't get over that hump either. But I've just made the point that in those close games, Tomlin was aces, the best in the NFL in one possession games. Can McCarthy do that? If he can't, I think I'll be talking about that, at least about Tomlin's sort of superpower in that sense to win those tight, close 7-point, 8-point games. But yeah, overall, it's not going to change things too much unless something crazy radical happens where the team wins 3 games or the team wins the Super Bowl. Tomlin's legacy is his own.
I agree. All right, Jason Chadwell. He has a Juju Smith-Schuster question. Hi, David Alex. I was going back down memory lane watching old highlights. What are your thoughts and memories of Juju when he was a Steeler? Well, first and foremost, I think you start with the rookie season that he was able to compile. That will be memorable in and of itself. I always remember the several of the blocks that Juju made, and obviously the one on Perfect as well too. Very physical, very good third down, get the yardage that you need type third down player. And then the couple of the long receptions for touchdowns. I think both of them the identical length. What was it? 80,
Nine,
what,
97,
96,
97, 97.
97. Yeah, those come to mind. I think when you think of Juju Smith-Schuster, I think also you can't help but think about Juju and the TikTok stuff and the social media stuff. I generally I thought he was a great kid. I thought he was very entertaining overall. But I think at its core, if you're talking about him on the football field, it was toughness, physicality, and the ability to come up with the big explosive play when you really, really needed it.
Yeah, that sums it up well. He was, in a sense, sort of the start of that new social media age receiver. I don't see that as a bad thing. It just sort of, that's kind of where I felt like he kind of had that line of, was it line of demarcation? How do you say it? Demarcation? Is that the right phrase? It doesn't matter. But that's kind of started to bring that vibe to it. I think he was misunderstood. He wasn't a bad guy. He wasn't a distraction for the team. He was locking in on football when football needed to be the focus. But yeah, I remember first of all how young he was when he came out. He was still 20 years old when Pittsburgh drafted him. He was just so couldn't even drink yet to celebrate draft night. I mean, legally at least, I'm sure he did. Yeah, that's how young he was, and the big plays you talked about against Denver and Detroit. That's kind of the memory with me, and then the physicality, the blocks, and then really his career changed from that big downfield playmaker to the underneath receiver that did the dirty work on third down pretty quickly in his career because his knees are pretty much shot. It's kind of the word in the book on Juju, but the evolution of his sort of game and style is also a memory.
All right. Let's see. Robert Oberruder writes in, "Hi, David Knox. Figured I'd take the bait." This is on Michael Pittman Jr. "Figure I'd take the bait, provide some feedback on your overall lukewarm takes on Michael Pittman, though I hesitate to call your opinions negative, since I think you both think he's a good player, not the type or caliber you were hoping the Steelers would pursue." He says, "The reasons I'm pretty happy with them getting Pittman are: one, he seems to be useful in a scheme proof way, and guys who can get open and be quarterback friendly are never out of style. Number two, related to point one, he could be a young quarterback's best friend in a safety blanket kind of way. And three, I think you're overstating the zone versus man coverage thing a bit." He says, Matt Harmon from Reception Perception tweeted that Pittman's success rate against man coverage last year was 70.8% compared to Romeo Dobbs' success rate against man coverage of 69.2%. Also, per a tweet from Matt Harmon, both figures per Harmon's charting, I assume. So even if Pittman only gets NFL open with physicality and Dobbs gets opener with good route running, I think that both are nice to have. I do not have a strong aesthetic preference for either one, he says. Having a huge set of steady hands who can get open in zones and also be pretty useful in man seems okay to me. Anyway, that's my best shot, he says. Love the show and absolutely cannot wait to read Alex's training camp coverage. It's a true highlight of following the team throughout the year. All right, appreciate
Thank
that
you.
email there and kind of your thoughts on Michael Pittman. Look, I think Michael Pittman's a fine all around wide receiver. Yeah, where we kind of splitting hairs a little bit with the whole, Romeo Dobbs thing and all. Perhaps, and we'll see. Look, Aaron Rodgers his play is gonna have uh, a huge impact on, distribution of the ball and usage of Michael Pittman. Can Michael Pittman get down the field and against man and make some explosive plays? I still think, regardless of Rogers' play and Pittman's fit, I feel pretty comfortable in penciling in Pittman of, what did I say, somewhere between 60 and 65 receptions overall with this, and that's obviously not bad at all. I think he gives this team a legitimate 1-2 punch, if you will, at the wide receiver position. He'll do some of the dirty work for you as well too. So yeah, I mean, I understand kind of him wanting to highlight maybe a little bit more of Pittman's ability to excel against man coverage there, and nothing, regardless of who we'd rather have seen this team maybe go out and get. Uh, None of that's going to change at this point. Pittman should find a way to contribute, more than we've seen any kind of number two
Mhm.
contribute in Pittsburgh in quite some seasons here.
Yeah, I think those are all fair takes on Pittman. And yeah, I think lukewarm is a good phrase to use for at least my feelings on Pittman. I wouldn't say it's negative, but it's not as positive as some others. I mean, yeah, certainly he can be a quarterback's best friend. And I think it's a good point about maybe a future young quarterback, Howard or Aller or somebody else that can kind of lean on him, but it's a little hat on a hat because Frymuth can be that guy. I think Bernard is capable of being that guy and has the skill set to be that guy too. And if they're all that guy, then who's providing something else? And that's what I'm looking for, the something else in this passing game, the big playability. The man coverage stat is interesting. I'd have to look into it. I mean, he stops running a more downfield route tree. Is he facing better cornerbacks on the outside than a slot corner? There's some variables to be talked about there. But, this offense has to create big plays. I'm still a little skeptical that they have the guys that can really do that to elevate that. Obviously, a lot does ride on Rodgers, as you said, but I was looking for a little bit more in terms of the big play potential of that unit in a year in which they have certainly given this receiver room quite a facelift.
All right, one more. Let's see. From Alex Jacobs writes in, "Hi, David and Alex. Which player do you think has the most to gain/lose from the preseason this year?" He says, "To me, people like Broderick Jones, Will Howard, Roman Wilson, and Caleb Johnson stand out." Hey, that's a good selection of players right there. First and foremost, will Broderick Jones stay off the PUP list? I think that's the big question that we're asking we're looking to get answer from him here within a week and 1 day here. Will Howard, look, he's definitely going to be under the microscope, potentially battling for that number 2 spot. Roman Wilson and Caleb Johnson both have a lot to gain and lose, it feels like, during this preseason on tap here. So, I mean, if you're going to build a short list of guys to had the most to gain or lose from the preseason this year, it's hard to. I think you got to start with the 4 names that he definitely listed here: Broderick Jones, Will Howard, Roman Wilson, and Caleb Johnson. Can Caleb Johnson function as a special teams player? Because look, your top 2 guys are obviously set: Rico Dowdle and Jalen Warren there, and it just feels like if Caleb Johnson wants to make this team, he's going to have to show something on special teams. And Roman Wilson, definitely, we got to see him stay healthy, and I would think he's going to get a lot of playing time during the preseason as well too, albeit with a backup quarterback, and he's going to have to play like he's a third-year player that's played 1,000 or more snaps in the NFL and kind of be the big kid on the playground overall, even though he's not that big of a kid. I appreciate the video that came out yesterday with him working, getting some jugs time and throwing time with his receiver coach. And can he make an impact and live up to at least kind of his draft pedigree, which he obviously hasn't done up until this point.
Yeah, that's all well said in that list of names. It's hard to argue with. To give some maybe less talked about names, how about some of these offensive linemen in potential contract years? Dylan Cook fighting for that right tackle job. Can he cement that? I think he's still, to my knowledge, a restricted free agent, but a lot in front of him. Spencer Anderson, can he lock down that right guard job? And we talked about, could they rotate early in the season? We'll see, but a good summer is a good thing for Anderson, who, by the way, changed agents recently. He's now represented by one of one agency, which also represents Keanu Benton, Zach Frazier, Nick Herbig, who just got his $100 million deal. And so Anderson in a contract year knows that a really good summer is a good start to him getting a big payday, potentially in March of 2027.
How about Darnell Savage, guy we talked about a little bit earlier? What could the preseason mean for him as far as a lot to gain or lose?
Yeah, obviously, yeah, and then the guys he's competing with, Pierce Jennings and Castro, also obviously, they're fighting for spots. But that's true of a lot of guys. Anyone fighting for a roster spot that summer is going to be huge. So yeah, those are all good names to suggest.
What about Cameron Johnston?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, if he just kind of cement his case, it feels like he's going to be the guy. But if he really struggles this summer, then yeah, they would look to replace him. If I had to just give one name of all the names we mentioned, though, that you think has the most riding on this summer, who would it be?
How about Caleb? I like that.
Okay, I'll go Will Howard. Obvious as it is, I think, because he could go from number 2 quarterback to off the roster, and it's a lot of daylight in between. So
okay.
I'll go Howard.
That's a good choice as well, too, and we'll obviously have a lot of eyes on him moving forward here. All right, great questions this week through the email bag here. If you want to get a question answered on a future show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. What else do we have to round things out here, Alex?
I think
else?
that's everything. It does look confirmed, according to TMZ, that Bell's attorney was basically confirming it with his arrest and warrant was for failed child support. And so that seems to be the central issue there. Don't have any other really additional details, but he's going to go in front of a judge and kind of plead his case. So we'll see what happens from there. But that's all I got, Dave.
All right. Meantime, you can follow me on Twitter/X at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate to the cause, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button and follow the directions that way. So until, let's see, no live stream tonight, right?
Correct. No live stream tonight.
All right. We will be back on Wednesday, getting well within a week of the start of training camp there, and we'll continue working through the 90 and 30 series. So, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.